no doubt the numbers will we'll catch a couple of stragglers before we get started. Again, folks, just remember to look out for the survey that comes following the webinar, and click on that link, and we'll get this CPE sorted out this Friday at the conclusion of this week's webinars. Had a couple of challenges with getting some of the recordings online from this week and last week, so just bear with me, but I do have them recorded, so fingers crossed I'll have them up very shortly. And of course, any questions that you do have, please just make sure you enter those into either the chat box or the question section, and we'll do our best to answer those in a timely manner. As I said earlier, pretty excited about today's webinar. Technology has come such a long way that those folks maybe 3-4 years ago that were on the leading edge and trying some of this OCR type technology, they were having some challenges with it, but the improvements in it have been dramatic, and there are some features that SurePrep can offer you in terms of helping systemize this process, but really go truly paperless on a front-end basis that I think you will be very excited to learn more about. I was in a retreat on Monday with the firm, and I spent some time with the people, and realization is a bit of a challenge for them at the moment, and so we were trying to work out how we could improve realization. And one of the managers came back to us and said, you know what, there's 3 partners, and each of them wants their returns done a little bit differently. So it's really difficult for us to get efficient and productive when we have to change things ever so slightly depending on what each partner wants. And that's a common trait throughout many firms. And what we want to do is to really get efficient and to really improve the profitability of tax return preparation. We've got to systemize. We've got to break it down into its component tasks and follow those same steps regardless of the return, regardless of the partner who's in charge of that return. So that's a big challenge, and often technology is a really good way of moving towards that systemized process. So I'm delighted that Dave Wyle, the CEO of SurePrep, is joining us. And Dave, I'll hand over to you, and perhaps you can just open with how many tax returns will you prepare this year?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Damien. This year's SurePrep, it's hard to know the exact number beforehand, but it will certainly be in the range of 250,000 tax returns will be processed by one service or another, meaning, we have people that send returns for scan and organize, for scan and populate. We do outsourcing. So we process returns via a variety of services, but it'll be in the couple 100,000 range. And you can imagine when you process that number of returns, you certainly need to systematize and standardize and be efficient. You can't do things differently. And so the technology that we're talking about, we actually originally developed it to use ourselves and ended up offering it to CPA firms. So we'll take a look at that today. Today, as you mentioned, we'll talk generally about systemizing tax preparation and becoming paperless. A recent survey said that 73% of accounting firms were benefiting from some sort of tax document automation. So we'll take a look at what tax document automation is today, and you can see, are you one of these firms? If not, maybe you want to be. If you are you doing things as well as you could, as efficiently as you could be? So those are some things that hopefully we'll get out of today's webinar. To give you a brief overview of our agenda today, we'll talk about what tax document automation is to begin with, so we all are on the same page of what we're talking about. Then we'll discuss some scanning best practices. We'll then take a look at an example of a paperless workflow, like a workflow diagram, so that people can get an idea of how people that are front-end paperless manage their process. We'll discuss the tools that are required to work in a paperless workflow, in a front-end paperless workflow, and take a look at a short software demo regarding that. And then we will have some time left for Q&A at the end. And if you have questions as you go, please type the questions in to your GoToWebinar console, and we'll try to hit some of those questions along the way, and of course at the end as well. And if we can't get to your question, we'll follow up with you after the webinar. So starting out to talk about what is tax document automation, really, a broad definition would be using technology to maximize the efficiency of a front-end paperless tax process. And I specify front-end because there are people that do what we call a back-end paperless tax process, where basically the tax process is paper-based. Just when you're all done, they scan the documents for storage. But that's really, scanning for storage. That's not a paperless process. Paperless process means you scan at the beginning and you don't use paper throughout. So if you're going to be scanning at the beginning, then you need to use technology to maximize the rest of that process. And when we talk about automating tax documents, there's really two types of documents we're talking about automating. Documents that started out as hard copy and then get scanned. And we generally categorize these into two types of documents. These are standard documents like W-2s, 1098s, 1099s, K-1s, brokerage statements, organizer pages, and so on. And then there's non-standard documents, which would be everything else, handwritten documents, printouts from QuickBooks, things like that. With the standard documents, you can use OCR technology, which we'll discuss today, to automate different aspects of working with those documents. It can be, you can automate the organization and bookmarking of those documents, and you can also automate the data extraction from those documents. But even if it's not a standard document, not a document that you can use OCR technology to automate either the organization or the data entry from, you still need technology to ensure that you can work on screen in a paperless tax process with those scanned documents, or the non-scanned, which would be the other type. These are documents that originate in electronic format. Excel, Word, PDF documents that weren't scanned from paper but started out as PDF, emails. So you need technology that not only automates through OCR the organization of standard documents and the extraction of data from software that allows you to work with all of these documents, whether they were scanned or not scanned, whether they're Excel, Word, PDF, etc., efficiently in a paperless workflow. Why would you want to do this? Well, the most obvious answer is if you're using the right tools, it saves time. It can save you 30 or 60 minutes per return. And one thing that's interesting is that the biggest beneficiary in terms of time savings when you have a process like this, meaning a front-end paperless tax process, are the reviewers and the review time. Because so often we hear people say, well, I don't want to go paperless because it takes me longer to prepare returns on paper. Longer to prepare returns on screen electronically than it does in paper. And I don't want to, give up the, time savings or efficiency in order to be paperless. People that do feel that way, often it's because they don't have the tools to work on screen, and so, they end up, not being able to gain those efficiencies. But when you do have the tools to cross-reference on screen, to bookmark, to index, to do everything you do on paper but efficiently on screen, what that means is you can put together an organized set of work papers that then the reviewers can have a nice index set of work papers. They can click on cross-references to go from one number to another, and you save time at really the highest billable level, which is the review time. Another thing it does is it promotes standardization. So there's different ways to say this. We said systematizing in the beginning, but when you use OCR technology to, let's say, automate the organization of documents, then you'll find that standard documents always and automatically are organized to follow the flow of the return. And if you have a good electronic workpaper tool that allows you to take the other documents and also organize them in a standard indexing system, a bookmarking system, then what it means is every time a return is prepared, the documents are organized the same way. You have the same workpaper index, the same documentation standards, meaning tick marks and cross-references. And of course, standardization is what you need to be able to achieve consistent levels of both efficiency and quality. And when you use tax document automation software, you'll see that, once again, it's not just about using OCR technology to extract data from documents or to organize documents. It's really about getting technology that allows you to do everything you do on paper, but to do it on screen, not just as efficiently, but more efficiently. And so we'll take a look at specifically what that means today. But once again, we've heard so many people say, oh, it takes me longer to do it on screen. That's because you don't have the right tools. If you have the right tools, not only can it, not only will it not take you longer to do it on screen, it'll take you less time to do it on screen. And then you'll get all the other benefits of being paperless, such as being able to access documents anywhere, being able to work from multiple locations, from home, from a hotel room, on the road, greater security because you're not going to spill coffee on paperless documents and ruin them. You're going to have them backed up, so you're not going to lose them. They're safer. A janitor is not going to be able to look through them when they're cleaning at night and so on. So you have all the other benefits of going paperless, too, that should be considered. But in order to do that, you have to be able to do on screen what you do on paper in an efficient manner. And we'll take a look at how paperless text workpaper tools can do that for you.
And Dave, would this be a good time to do a poll just to see what level of automation the listeners are currently in?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, let's launch a poll just to make sure everyone's paying attention. What type of tax document automation did you benefit from last tax season? First one is none. Second, I scanned my client's tax documents but manually organized the papers. I used an automated scan and organize tool. I don't prepare 1040 tax returns. So none. That middle one is probably that back-end scanning. So we've done it in paper originally and then scanned everything. And then the third option there is where we scanned on the front end and did that. And I will just reiterate what Dave was saying. We had a couple of folks that were scanning on the front end but just found the process cumbersome. Whenever another document came in and they'd have to rename it and cut and paste and print an Excel sheet to a PDF and then drag that in and rename it. When you do it once, it's not a problem, but if you've got to do it a couple of hundred times, all those little 30 seconds and 60 seconds, they all add up. And we had a couple of members, I remember one in North Carolina, they just decided to go back to back-end scanning because I think is what Dave was saying, it was just getting cumbersome. So let's, we got 90% having reported. I will close that poll and share it. And I'm not sure if you see that, Dave, but what type of tax document automation did you benefit from last season? 22% saying none whatsoever. 56, they're saying that I scanned my client's tax documents but manually organized the actual return, so that's that back-end scanning. And then another 20% saying I used an automated scan and organize tool, and then 4% saying I don't prepare tax returns. So would you say that's probably about right, what you're saying, about 50% using the back-end scanning?
Yeah, the back-end scanning is definitely more prevalent than the front-end scanning because it requires less change in process. People can continue the paper-based process and then just scan at the end for storage. And that certainly is better than, having paper-based storage, but it doesn't allow for any of the other benefits I just mentioned, as well as, paper-based preparation is time-consuming in many ways, and I'll just give you one example. Let's say you have an Excel spreadsheet that's one of your work papers. You print it out and you put it in the work papers. You might make some tick marks and some notes on it. Then you need to make a change to the spreadsheet, so you change it. You need to print it out again. You need to replace the old one, maybe redo your tick marks. So there's things like this that maybe people don't think about because they're used to it. But there are inefficiencies just in that paper-based process that with the latest paperless tools, it eliminates those inefficiencies. We'll take a look at that later.
And just Dave, one comment that came through from Rob. We use SurePrep 1040 Scan Organize. It rocks. So thanks very much for that comment, Rob, and I'll hand back to you, Dave.
Great. Oh, thank you. We love getting comments like that. So 1040 Scan, which is the SurePrep product that uses OCR technology to automate 1040 tax documents and 1041 tax documents, is really, it has the most comprehensive document coverage in the industry. 45 standard documents, which means W-2s, 1099s, K-1s, different state K-1s, things like that. Over 325 different brokerage statements, and not just picking up the 1099 summary information on page 1, or even some software, some of the other software packages will pick up just the 1099 summary information and the Schedule D, but that's it. So you still have to go back to the brokerage statement and pick up the rest of the data. But the SurePrep picks up everything. It picks up the margin interest, the investment fees, the foreign dividends, so that you can, if you have a foreign tax calculation, foreign tax credit calculation that needs to be done, and so on. It picks up all of the data from the brokerage statements, and then the organizer pages, which you can have the system either set to just bookmark or to actually extract the data, and it will read handwritten data. Of course, the handwritten data is more variable than the typed data, and so if it's hard for a human to read, it's going to be hard for a computer to read. And if it's easy for a human to read, the computer will read it well as well. So also, unique thing about 1040 Scan is that the Pro version, which does the data extraction and the scan and populate, works with 4 different tax softwares: GoSystem, Lacert, ProSystem, and UltraTax, which I think is the only software to work with so many different packages like that. And of course, Organize, since you're not exporting data to the tax return, can work with any tax package. And really, the key differentiator that you'll see is SP Binder, which is our paperless tax preparation tool. And this is, getting back to what we were saying earlier, fine, you've scanned the documents up front, great. You use OCR and the standard documents get organized and you extract data. But you still need to finish the return, and you still need an efficient way to work with not only the standard documents, but the non-standard documents, the electronic documents, the Excel documents, the PDFs, and so on. You still need an efficient way to work with all of those on screen that's more efficient than doing it on paper or without these tools on screen. SP Binder is what provides that, and we'll take a look at that soon. First, let's just talk about what the scanning best practices are, so that if you do go to a front-end paperless environment, you understand how to maximize your results, starting from the first step, which is scanning. So typically 300 DPI black and white is what is asked for, not color or grayscale. First of all, color will make your images huge in size, take up a lot of storage. Your storage costs will go up dramatically. 300 DPI is good enough for OCR to read accurately. If you go more than 300 DPI, say 600 DPI, etc., once again, your file size is going to get huge. You don't want to go less than that, because then the quality isn't there to be able to read things accurately. TIFF or PDF is pretty common. That's what SurePrep reads. You want to always scan originals if possible. So if you don't have originals, then you'll deal with whatever you've been given. But if you have originals, if the client sent you originals, don't photocopy them first and then scan them. Scan the originals. Keep them intact. Don't go ahead and hole punch them first or mark them up. Don't go ahead and circle things and do handwriting on the documents before you scan them. Wait till after you scan them, because all of those extraneous marks can get in the way of OCR applications. You don't obviously want sticky notes covering up things, or you just basically want the documents to be as close to unmarked and in good condition as possible. And the other thing that's a good practice to do is to have someone count the number of pages before you scan them, and then count the number of pages in the PDF that comes out from the scan, just to make sure you did scan everything. You don't want to make sure nothing got left out. Now, just once again, this is very high level, but just to make sure that everyone understands what we're talking about when we talk about scan and organize or scan and populate, the very high level workflow would be you scan the documents, and then there's a step that we call verification. Now, this step is not for scan and organize, because remember, scan and organize only organizes the documents and bookmarks them. it does not extract data from them. So if there's no data extracted, there's no data to verify. But if you're using scan and populate, there's a verification step, and you can see that screenshot here. This is an example of verification of Schedule D. And 1040 scan does some unique things that other packages doesn't do or don't do. You'll see that the document on top has all the items highlighted that were read, and below you can see those items. If you want to know where any one number is, you can click on the number on the document and it'll highlight it below in the input form, or vice versa. Click on the number in the input form and it highlights it on the document. You'll see there's double check mark next to the sales price on the cost basis. That's a feature we call auto verification. It means that the numbers have to be right because we checked the sales price minus the cost basis equals to the gain or loss. The software did that automatically, and it determined that if that formula is true, it must have read the sales price and the cost basis accurately. So, we do these things, or the software does these things, so that you don't need to verify every transaction. You can glance over it and see, okay, everything's auto-verified. I can just go to the next page. Or this transaction's not auto-verified. I should look at it. That's the verification step. There's one more step in what we call the review wizard, where there are certain things certain types of documents that can get exported to more than one place. A W-2 is always going to go to wages for the most part. A brokerage statement is always going to go to interest, dividends, or capital gains. But there are some documents that could go to multiple places. A 1098 could go to Schedule A, it could go to a Schedule E rental property, and so on. And so, we don't want to just export those documents, a 1098, for example, always to Schedule A, because that won't be right all the time, and it takes more time to clean up something than it does to just enter it right the first time. So we have these, what we call review wizard steps, that allow you to determine where things should get exported if they could go to more than one place. And that's what you see on the screen in front of you. After that's done, the data is exported to the tax software, and the organized source documents and bookmarked source documents are viewed. And you can prepare the rest of the return by looking at the documents that were not exported to the return. These would be the non-standard documents. And in one screen, you'd be looking at those documents, and in the other screen, entering them into the tax software.
Excuse me, Dave. I have a quick question. What sort of person or level would you recommend at the verify and correct stage? What type of person in the office?
That's a very good question. So first of all, as a general concept, we always recommend pushing work to the lowest billable level possible. I mean, that's the whole idea of leverage, is that don't do something if you can have someone at a lower billable rate do it. That's why a partner doesn't prepare every return themselves. They hire staff people to do it. And so, the same thing would go with the verification step. So we would say if it's possible to have, let's say, an admin person, or depending on the size firm you are, a couple admin people or interns, or maybe the first year staff or something like that, that does that verification process, then there's a few things. First of all, this is your lowest billable rate people. They don't need to know all the rules of tax preparation because they're basically verifying the accuracy of the entry. And when your preparer, let's say when your more experienced preparer gets the return, they won't need to go through that verification process. They'll essentially get a return that is 75% organized and entered. And they'll only have to deal with the non-standard documents. So, we recommend often that, people try to centralize that process at that intern or admin or first-year staff level. But sometimes people, they're admin, they don't have interns, their admin people they only have one admin person, and that person is too busy. And so then the preparers will do it as the first step in the preparation. So there's not just one way to do it. It depends on the dynamics of your firm. But if you can centralize it and push it down to the lowest billable level possible, since you don't need to know, how to prepare a complex tax return, you just need to verify data, that would be the way to go.
Thanks, Dave. And just one more question. At what number of source documents have you found that 1040 scan and populate makes financial sense?
That's also an interesting question because what I would say is that what makes financial sense is to adopt a process that overall maximizes your quality and your profitability. And so you can't really look at it at a one return by one return basis. You have to think about it in terms of systematizing and standardizing on the most efficient overall process. So, you really need to have one process, one standard, and that means that if you use something like this, you use it on all your returns. Now, is it possible that there is a return that is, 5 pages of source documents and that, if you just look at the economics on that one return, then, it doesn't pay off? Yeah, that's possible. But what happens is when you have firms that say, okay, I'm going to tell my people subjectively, like, you decide whether it would be of benefit to use on this return. And if you think it's big enough, then you use this new software and this new process. Without fail, anytime I've seen a firm take that approach, nobody uses it. Because people have a tendency to use what they're used to use the process that they're used to. And if someone says, here, we've got this new thing, and, use it if you think that the return's big enough, it almost won't get used. So what happens is, because you're trying to save a tiny bit of money on these, very small percentage of small returns, you miss the whole big enchilada. You miss the whole benefit of really improving and standardizing and your practice and making it efficient.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Dave, and I think it has to be, this is the way it's done here. I think, yes, it might be easier just to enter the information from those 5 source documents, but I also like to throw out there the opportunity cost. Is that the best use of your time when technology can take care of it? That's probably the other thing that I would add in there. Yes, we want to systemize and standardize preparation across the firm, but we also want to make sure that we are freeing up time for our valuable people to be spent on valuable activities. And sometimes that's even just getting out of the office a little bit earlier at 9 o'clock rather than 10 o'clock at night. But I would suggest that while, yes, it might be quicker just to enter those 5 documents yourself because you could do that in your sleep, we don't see the efficiencies across the board. So thanks very much for that, Dave.
Yeah, and you can't have 2 different processes. Firms with 2 different processes for tax returns, they gravitate towards one or the other, and probably the one that they're used to. So if you're going to do something like this, you need to approach it in a dedicated and serious manner and say, this is our new process. We're doing it on everything. We're implementing it. We're, and this is our new process. And we'll fine-tune it and we'll tweak it, but we're not going to have 2 processes. So, a workflow example here, and this, somewhat talks to who does things. You start off with receiving the client source documents. Typically, maybe a partner or the client relationship manager, whether that might be a manager or a partner, will receive the documents. And when they feel they have enough to start preparation, we'll put it on some stack for scanning. Once again, we get to the point of trying to push down work to the lowest billable level possible. We see firms that have each preparer scanning their own documents, but really it's better to just have those documents go on a stack in an admin room and have the admin people scan the documents and submit them, upload them, just like they might do the final processing, to print things out and get them ready for signature. So you would have them scanning and submitting documents for OCR. Then there is this verification step that could either go at the admin or the preparation level, as I mentioned before. And if you can push it down to the admin level, that's best, but it can be done at either levels. Then you prepare the return using the paperless tools provided. We'll take a look at that. Review the return using those tools. We'll take a look at how you can do an efficient review using these tools. And you sign, and that's it. Send it for final assembly. This is obviously very high level. What I would mention is that SurePrep has an implementation consulting package that we do with firms where we actually document out what is your current workflow, what is your desired workflow, and it's much more detailed. And that's something that's very helpful to make sure that everybody understands what the new workflow is, whether you do it with SurePrep or yourself, to really sit down with people and understand, where are we now and where do we want to be with the new technology that we'll be adopting is important to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, Dave, I think that's really important, just mapping the process and having somebody look at that process. We had a quick question, Dave. At the verify and correct step, I think you said that includes determining which form to send the info, which would need someone who knows the client and tax law. Is there a good way to break out the verification of numbers versus where they are going?
That is a good question. I can see, Damien, that we have an astute group of people here, which I'm glad to hear, because that tells me people are listening and watching.
They haven't ducked out for a cup of coffee.
Exactly. So, just to go back to a previous slide here, what happens is that, well, let me even go back one more slide. You do the verification, and this is the part where you're only verifying that the numbers in the image match the number in the input form. When you're done with the last page, it then jumps to these questions. Now, of course, the system doesn't know if you're an admin person or a preparer with knowledge of the client. So if you're an admin person, what you can do, since as the person who asked the question rightfully pointed out, the admin person likely wouldn't know where a 1098 should go. Only the preparer would know that. So the admin person can click on this button that you see down here that says Finish Later. And then you can actually then forward the return to the next person or put it up in a queue for the next available preparer. And there's a dashboard where you can see returns assigned to you or returns that in general need to be started. And when the preparer then starts the return, it starts right on this step. So if you say that verification in total takes, I'm just going to throw out a number, I'll say 10 minutes, but it of course depends on the number of documents. If you have 10 documents versus 100 pages or 200 pages, it's going to be different. But let's say, 10 minutes, I would say 8.5 minutes is the verification of the OCR data, and 1.5 minutes are these steps, because it's a few items, it's pretty high level, it's not verifying numbers, it's just determining where things should go. So in this case that you mentioned, the admin person doing the verification would click Finish Later, forward the return to the preparer. The preparer starts, it opens right to this step. The preparer spends that 1.5 minutes or whatever, the 15% of the time associating these documents to the right input form, and then they complete the preparation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. Hope that answered that question there, Julie.
And I think at this point, maybe, was there another polling slide that we were going to look at?
Yep, perfect. Again, making sure everyone's paying attention, part of the CPE. So what we want to look at here in this poll question is, would you like to be able to merge Excel files, Word documents, and Outlook emails into your scanned tax work papers? And so this is an interesting question, and I think this is where we get very excited when we have a look at SP Binder, because we do a lot of looking at products and looking at what the providers are out there doing, and I don't think we've seen some of the functionality that you're about to see. And no surprise, all 69% voted, so we'll just keep it open for a little bit longer. But question is, would you like to be able to merge Excel files, Word documents, and Outlook emails into your scanned tax work papers? No surprises there. Let's just close that and share. And we've got we've got 93% that said yes, a complete tax binder would be beneficial. Not surprisingly, nobody said I don't see the benefit. 4% replied with I already use a Workpaper tool that allows me to merge Excel files, etc. And then 4% saying I do not prepare 1040 tax returns. Hopefully these are the firm administrators that will be able to take what they're seeing back to the team to provide a recommendation. So no surprises there, I don't think, Dave.
Well, that's really interesting, that 92%, that's great. It shows that there's such a common need to be able to have a tax binder that has everything in it. And the thing is, we get back to this issue before of people saying, I'm having trouble being efficient on screen like I was on paper. If you think about it, on paper, you could organize things any way you want. if you had an Excel file with 10 sheets, you could print out those 10 sheets and then intersperse them among your client documents. If you had, one file that was a detail of, fixed assets, and you could put that behind depreciation for the Schedule C or whatever it was, you didn't just like print out the 10 sheets from Excel and keep them all together like that on top of each other, and then below that stack all the documents. You organize things in any way you want, and because in the end everything was in paper, you could organize with any level of flexibility and have a truly single binder with all of your work papers in it, and it doesn't matter where it came from, whether it came from PDF or Excel or Word or email, because in the end you were printing them to paper. But what we see now when people go paperless is they open up their document management system or their Windows Explorer, whatever it is, and they see what you see here on screen. They don't see a work paper file. They've just got a couple files, a PDF with maybe 50 pages in it, an Excel file with a bunch of sheets. That's it. Maybe they have 3 or 4 files. And there's no way to organize them the way that with the flexibility that you used to be able to organize them. I mean, the only way you could possibly do that would be if you took each sheet from the Excel file and broke it into a separate Excel file, and each page from the PDF file and broke it into a separate, PDF file, so that you could truly organize down at the page level. But not only would that be hugely time-consuming, but if you did that with Excel, you wouldn't be able to cross-link between the sheets. Those links wouldn't be dynamic. That would be a huge benefit that you would lose. And if you had different PDF files, you wouldn't be able to quickly page through the pages of a PDF. You'd have to open up file by file. And so, it just wouldn't really work. And not only that, even if you did break up each page of the PDF into a separate PDF file and each sheet of the Excel file into a different Excel file, you still couldn't link between them. PDF and Excel would still be completely separate. You wouldn't be able to create a cross-reference between one Excel page and one PDF page, and you wouldn't have the same tick marking tools or sign-off tools between, because they're completely different applications that essentially are not integrated or integratable until now. What you'll see today, what SP Binder does, is SP Binder holds all of these documents that are typically in a tax binder, whether it's from PDF or Excel or Word or email. But it allows you to organize them with the same flexibility as paper. So for instance, this PDF file that has 32 pages, each page can be organized in a separate location in the binder index that you see. And this Excel file that has 3 different sheets, each sheet can go into a different location so that, and we're not breaking apart the file. It's still in the back end is staying as one single file that can be linked with each, the sheets can be linked together, and but it's all going into a single index and in a binder that gives a common tool to sign those documents off and to cross-reference them and so on. So rather than talk about it, I think the best thing to do at this point is to just give a quick look. What you see on screen is that application, the SP Binder. And if I go ahead and I open up the tree here, you'll be able to see that all the documents that were organized or read by OCR are already here, bookmarked under their respective bookmarks. And anything that was not read by OCR, the non-standard documents, is in the thumbnail bar here. And it's very easy for me to see what documents are not organized because the thumbnail bar is there, and I can see that they need to be put in the index. Now I can go ahead and I can add additional documents in here. So notice right now I have 28 pages that came from a single PDF. And I'm going to go ahead and take this Excel file and drag and drop it into the binder. I could drag and drop that Excel file not only from Windows Explorer, I can drag and drop it directly from an attachment in an Outlook email, or I could browse using a browse function and select it. Now that I've added that, note that I've got 3 additional work papers I can associate. And note that they're all part of one Excel file. They're different sheets in one Excel file, but I can organize them separately. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to organize these documents. I see here that I have a Jill's Craft Shop. So I'm going to go ahead and organize these documents for Jill's Craft Shop. And here's a PDF. And this last one is for medical expenses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and organize this one, this third sheet, over to medical expenses. So now if you take a look at what I've got 3 different sheets. I've got 2 of the sheets under Schedule C and 1 of them under medical expenses. And I truly have the organization flow like I would if I was on paper, because note, I can start off on a PDF page. I click next and I'm on an Excel workpaper, another Excel workpaper, now I'm on a PDF page, and so on. I could have a Word page in there, and I could have an email. And as I page next, it flows through them, you know, just as if I was turning pages in paper. Think about it, I could never do this if I just used Acrobat and Excel. I'd have to be opening up different applications. I could print everything from Excel to PDF and then put those pages in a PDF with the scan document so that I could have everything in PDF format, but then everything would be static. And if the Excel changed, just like on hard copy, I'd need to reprint it to paper if I changed to Excel. If I'm using PDF, I need to reprint the PDF if I make a change to Excel, but not here because these files are all live and dynamic. So for instance, I can go ahead and if I want to create a link here to a number on one of these other sheets, I can go ahead and create that link, and you'll see here that I've got, you know, an Excel formula, and it supports 300 or so different formulas, and I can change the formatting and things like that. So it's a live document that's in here. And I should mention that just what you saw me doing, dragging and dropping the unassociated or unindexed work papers into the tree is a huge time savings over Acrobat for a few reasons. One, the bookmark tree here, the index as we call it, the workpaper index, is automatically created in the binder from the pro forma data. So Jill's Craft Shop is blue. That means it was pro forma in the tax software. It's automatically created, so I don't need to go and create bookmarks like I would in Acrobat. The bookmarks are already there because they're automatically generated from the pro forma data in the return. And in Acrobat, even if you bookmark a page, it doesn't change the order. So if that Schedule C page were at the bottom of the pile, it would stay at the bottom of the pile even though the Schedule C bookmark might be in the middle of the bookmarks. And, you know, typically people want the flow of the documents, the order of the documents, to match the bookmarking order. So if they page through them, they're going through in the same order as the bookmarks, which is typically in the order of the return, wages, interest, dividend, etc. So when you go ahead and when we dragged and dropped this page, which originally was paged when there was 28 pages before we added the 3 Excel pages in there, this was page 28. We dragged and dropped it. Not only did it get bookmarked, but it became page 18. So we organized it. We bookmarked it with one shot, whereas if you were using Acrobat, you would need to drag the page from the bottom, page 28, all the way up to the proper place. In addition to bookmarking it, it would take several steps. And now that we've got everything in here, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to ask a question. This is all good and well when we've got the client bringing everything in one sitting, but that's rarely the case. What about when a client, and we can see how we can drag and drop files when a client emails some of those non-standard files, but what if some more standard files come in after they've received that missing documents email that typically goes out?
You know, that is another good point, because when people just use Acrobat, what happens is you get those additional documents, and even if you're using an OCR package or whatever, and it'll just spit out. Let's say you get a new an additional 1099 and some K1s. It will spit out a new PDF, and any other scan and organize or scan and populate system will just spit out a new PDF that has just those new 1099 and K1s bookmarked in that PDF. And now you have your old PDF that you've been working in that has your original set of documents bookmarked and organized, and you have now a second new PDF. Both PDFs have 1099s and K1s in them, and if you get a third set of documents with more 1099s and K1s, now you'll have a third PDF with 1099 and K1s bookmarked in them. So you can no longer go to one PDF and open it up and find all your 1099s together or K1s. You have to go hunting and go to multiple PDFs looking for that K1. And you can merge the files, but merging the files doesn't merge the bookmarks, and it doesn't merge the page order. So merging the file would just mean you'd have a single file with 1099s and K1s bookmarked in 3 different places, in the beginning, middle, and end. And to actually manually drag and drop all of the 1099 bookmarks together and then the pages together, because you need to do those separately, and then the K1s and so on, too time-consuming. Nobody does it. So they just end up with basically partially organized electronic files, which then hurts their efficiency. But with 1040 scan, when you scan those additional 1040 the documents, the K1s, the 1099s, whatever they are, they actually flow directly into the existing binder and into the proper place in the index tree, so that there's no merging you need to do. It gets merged in there automatically, and there's an easy way to find out those new documents too, so you can review them, and I'll shortly discuss that.
Okay, great. Dave, what about handwritten documents like organizer paper?
Yeah.
And let me know if you're going to cover this shortly. But handwritten notes like organizer pages, will they get recognized?
They will. Well, the only handwritten data that, well, all organizer pages will get bookmarked. And the only handwritten data that the system will actually extract is handwritten data on organizer pages. So if it's handwritten data, just like on a cocktail napkin or whatever, that'll just be a non-standard document. But if it's on an organizer page, it will read that data.
Great, thank you.
So, just like if you were to print everything to paper, you'd have a common tool, a pencil, that you could use to do anything, regardless of whether it started out as Excel or PDF or Word or whatever. You could use it for tick marks, and you could use it for cross-referencing and sign-offs. Same thing here. I can go ahead and I can right mouse click here and place, different tick marks. We provide 45 standard tick marks. You can create custom tick marks. The tick marks that I use on this Excel page, I can go ahead and I can use on this PDF page. I could use on a Word page. I could use on an email. I can go ahead, if I want to cross-reference a number like this number, I can go ahead and say cross-reference, and then I'll go to this other page. I'm going to cross-reference it to this corresponding number. Notice that I'm now on page 18. I have a cross-reference going to page 19. I click on it. It takes me to page 19 with a cross-reference going to page 18. It's between an Excel file and a Word file and a PDF file. It could be between two Excel workpapers, two PDF workpapers, Excel and Word, or anything that's in here can be cross-referenced, except these cross-references are much more efficient than paper, because remember, on paper, I had to print it out, and then I hand wrote the cross-references on it, and then when the Excel file changes, I need to print it out again and redo it. Here I don't. I have the cross-reference. I can go ahead. I can make any change to the document I want, and I still maintain my documentation. I can go ahead and I can sign off on pages. And I can use the same sign-off tools whether I'm on an image. I can sign off here as prepare. You see there's up to 4 levels of sign-off. I can see who signed off and when. And if you only want 2 levels or 3 levels of sign-off, you can do that. But we have right now, I'm showing 4. And I can go ahead, I can sign off on that page, use the same tool to sign off on this Excel page. And if you were using a DMS, you might be able to, a document management system, you might be able to sign off on the entire Excel file. But because there's no other system that allows you to work with these electronic files at a more granular level than the file level. When you see an Excel file in Windows Explorer or a document management system, it only shows you the file level, nothing more granular than that. So you can sign off an entire Excel file, but what if you only want to sign off one page? For instance, here I've signed off this one page. I go to the next page, which is in the same file. It's a sheet in the same file, and notice that it's not signed off. So I can go ahead and sign off at each level. And if you were using Excel, I guess you could go ahead and you could put your initials in the top corner or something, but then you'd have to go to every sheet to see if you signed it off. Whereas here we've got a review tree where you can just go ahead and you can see I've signed off 2 work papers as a preparer. So now out of 31 pages, there's 29 pages that are unreviewed by the preparer. And I can go ahead and open them up, and I can see those 2 pages. It's these pages in green font right here. Those are the 2 pages I just signed off. So I can very easily see all the documents that I've signed off, all the ones that I haven't. And if someone goes ahead and changes a document, like I'll go ahead and place a stamp on here, notice that it tells me that a document was modified after sign-off, and it shows this exclamation mark. So I can go ahead and not only see what's signed off and what's not, but what was signed off and then modified, so I can go in and re-review it if I need to. When you get those subsequent documents, this is a great way to go back in and see what you haven't looked at yet. It's a very simple way to do that. Once again, you can't do this if you have a 50-page PDF file and a bunch of sheets in Excel. You can only sign off at the whole file level, not at the page level, unless you go in and do it on each page. But then how are you going to get a summarized view of what you've done?
Dave, could I just interrupt there and just share a story from Bob Goodman over in Massachusetts? A lot of features in the SP Binder, but this review tree is his #1 favorite. And he said when he was in the seminar, I think in August when we were in Mass, he loves it because he knows exactly where he is in every return. So if he gets interrupted or he heads out for the night, when he comes back in the morning, he knows exactly where he is in the return. He's also got about 12 people working underneath him, and he loves it as well because you can't run nor hide with this type of review in there. He knows exactly where every project is, where it's been signed off, where it's been last modified, so there's no way that it can be hidden in a drawer like it currently is in many offices, and it can be, oh yeah, it's in process. We know exactly where in process it is. So sorry to interrupt, Dave, but I thought that was just an interesting story from Bob about this feature.
The comment. Yeah, I appreciate the comment, and what we've really tried to do here is make it as easy or easier to do everything that you did on paper on screen. And so in many cases that means as easy, and in many cases it means easier, such as the features we've been showing with being able to cross-reference live documents, have statuses on sign off at the Workpaper or element level, as we call it, not at the file level, but each sheet or each page of the Excel file or the PDF.
And Dave, one question. What if Jill calls in and says her sales were actually 21,000, not 19,260? Can we go to the scanned document and write directly on it to show the change per client phone call?
Absolutely. So I'll go ahead. She says the other income was actually $10,000. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that. By the way, when I did that, notice that I got this modified alert on there, per client. And absolutely, you can see that it's basically just like an Excel file. And you can even open this in Excel if you needed to for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Every situation has been very well thought through from the moment the stuff, let's just call it that, comes in from the client to when the actual return is completed. That's what we liked about 1040 Scan, in that they really broke down step by step and looked at all of these. Well, how do we handle when a client calls in with more information? How do we handle this? How do we work in a live document? So it's something that we were very impressed by.
We're really a pioneer in this field. We've been doing this for 10 years, and it's a very mature application. So it's been through many iterations, many years of development, which is why there's it's so feature-rich. And I'll try to just go very quickly through a few items. There's other features that you can do to go ahead and, let's say, run a calculator tape if you want to, and you can go ahead and do all kinds of open items and review notes. And when you add a note, such as here, I'm going to add a note and say check with client. That note not only can be linked to the document that you started with, it can be linked to multiple documents. So if it relates to, let's say, this Excel file too, notice that I have one note here, and it's linked to an Excel file and a Word file. You could use comments in Adobe, but you couldn't have that comment relate to an Excel workpaper, only to the pages in Acrobat. Here I can have it relate to any workpaper. I can review it, I can clear it, I can delete it, I can have it subject to role-based security so that a preparer can't clear or delete a reviewer's notes. And I can go ahead and I can have there's missing documents. It tells me the documents that are missing, and because these are documents that were pro forma but we haven't received yet, it's an automated missing items list. And since we're running out of time, I won't show you, but I'll just tell you that with a couple clicks I can generate an email to the client that lists the documents that are missing. And if I get those documents and scan them in, they automatically get removed from my missing items list. And I can go ahead and I can, just like you might take paper on your desk and spread it out, you can look at it side by side. I can do the same thing with these work papers. I can open up different windows in different monitors and compare things side by side and cross-reference them and tick mark them while I'm looking at them and sign them off and so on. And as I do, you might have noticed that this move down to 30 here when I clicked on that. So it's actually, everything I do in these separate windows is linked to the binder, and when I close it, all my tick mark, anything else I do, collapses back into the binder. I could have 3 or 4 of these windows open if I have 3 or 4 monitors and work with everything in different monitors very efficiently. And when I'm all done, I could go ahead and print this whole binder to PDF, and the PDF will have the entire bookmark tree, all of the tick marks that I did, all of any open item or review notes that hadn't been deleted, the cross-references, everything, all the Excel files would be converted to PDF. So I'd have a single PDF file to put in my DMS, no different than you might print out a PDF of the tax return for your final storage. So you have the ability to do that if you want to be able to store it forever in PDF format in terms of the static completed version. But this is so much better for working with the workpapers dynamically and live.
And Dave, just 2 points that I really liked about that was that we could, all those notes are kept on there so that when we come back next year and whoever's doing the return can see all of that information that's contained within those notes. And I know that the references the references go static, but we can always, they at least guide us to which page it looks at. So I think that's really important for whoever comes and does the return next, that we're capturing all that information in an electronic format that sits on the return for it to be completed next year as well. But we can also print a clean copy, can't we? And print that to PDF clean and say, hey, client, do you want all your source documents, or here's the electronic copy of them?
Absolutely, that's a good point. Yeah, you can go ahead and you can print a PDF that has all of your work in it, even the sign-offs and the tick marks and everything. But you can also print a clean copy that's just the source documents that are bookmarked. And a lot of people like giving that to their client as an extra value add to say, here's back all of your documents, in an organized and bookmarked manner. So
Dave, I'm not sure how many more slides you have, but we've got a couple of questions here. So what would you like to do? Focus on...
Let's go ahead. I think is there one... Why don't we do this? Why don't we do one more... Well, let me just say this, that if you're going to be looking at doing something like this, the things that you need to think about are, first of all, what's the document coverage that a system like this handles? It should be a broad set of documents so you get maximum automation. And how do you handle the workpapers after the OCR? That's what SP Binder addresses. Do you have the ability to put together a single binder with integrated workpapers of all different types? That's really what you need to think about when you're thinking about tax document automation. You need to, as we mentioned in the beginning, think about your existing workflow, where you are today, where you want to be, what's the desired workflow. Set your expectations. Be ready to adjust as you find, things that can be done better. And also appoint champions that will be basically the key people responsible for rolling this out in your firm and becoming the experts, and that will interface with the vendors such as SurePrep to make sure that you're getting everything that you need. Having said that, why don't we do the last polling question, and then we'll go into some final Q&A.
Right, sounds like a plan. Okay, final polling question. Let me launch that. So do you plan to benefit from tax document automation this coming tax season? So just let us know what your feedback is based on what you've seen. And as people are filling that in, why don't I ask a couple of questions, Dave? Will 1040 Scan be able to read a multi-state W-2?
Yeah, absolutely.
Read multi-state W-2s.
Yeah, a typical W-2 can have up to 2 states on the bottom state portion. If someone is reporting income in more than 2 states, they'll have, let's say 2 or 3 pages of the W-2, and the system is designed to pick up all of the different state entries. So if you have, let's say, 5 entries across 3 W-2 pages, it will pick up all 5 of those state entries for that W-2.
Okay, and then how does SurePrep keep multiple page consolidated 1099s together once they are scanned and bookmarked?
So 1040 Scan actually reads the account number on the brokerage statements, and then groups them by account number. So that's why if you scanned in like 3 Merrill Lynch statements in a row, even though they're all from Merrill Lynch and have an identical layout, they'll all get identified separately and bookmarked as 3 different brokerage statements because it is based on those account numbers.
Okay, let's close that poll and we'll just share the results. So do you plan to benefit from tax document automation? 36 are just in the planning to evaluate stage, and hopefully this has been a valuable webinar. And Dave, I know CCH and LaCert have scan products. How do you compare? I know that we're out of time, but I remember sitting in on a webinar that compared LaCert's scan to SurePrep's 1040 scan. Was that webinar recorded that we might be able to share with folks?
Absolutely. I mean, at a very general level, our document coverage is by far the broadest, and we're the only ones that offer an electronic workpaper tool like SP Binder. But we did do very detailed comparison webinars for both of those products, and we can email links to anybody who wants to watch those webinars and see those comparisons.
Fantastic. 43% are in the evaluation stage. 14% used it and will be using it again. 4% know this technology frightens and confuses me. Please spend some time with it. Ron Peterson asked a good question. How feasible is the system for a small one-person office with a part-time assistant preparing about 350 returns per year?
Yeah, 350 returns is actually a good number of returns for one person. So that's not a small number. And there's no reason why, whether you're one person, I mean, does he want to be able to work from anywhere? Would he like to be able to be home and have access to the same thing that he does at work, or to travel? Would he like to be able to put together a set of work papers like this, but more efficiently, because he doesn't need to print it out, mark it up, and then maybe print it out again if it changes? So I don't see any reason why it would matter whether you're one person or 5 people or 10 people. Doing things on screen brings a whole host of benefits, but you need to do it efficiently. If you do it on screen, that's what this technology does for you.
Yeah,
Ron, mentioned,
I think you're spot on.
There's a free trial that I want to encourage people to try. If they go to sureprep.com/2020, there is a trial that includes free units. You can use those units with your own tax return data if you have any, or we'll provide you sample tax return data that you can process with it. An evaluation guide that walks you step through the process. Of course, it includes support and special pricing for 2020 members. So, I'll take as many questions, by the way, as we, I can keep going with questions, but I just want to make sure everyone knows about this website.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. Let's. I understand if people have to head off, we will get any additional questions answered, because it looks as if a few are coming in. But let me just say this. Let's have a look here. So, Dave, I think you owe Rob and Brian a couple of beers, because Rob says, again, I just wanted to say we've been using the software and we strongly recommend it. It is robust, yet easy to use. Brian Davis says, I can answer the question. I do roughly 250 returns. I have one assistant, and SurePrep works great for me, very efficient. So I think that's there. Mark will get the information of the LaCert comparison, the webinar over to you. James asks, I use ProSeries. Will Scan and Fill be available for that?
It doesn't work for the Scan and Fill doesn't work for ProSeries, but you can use the Scan and Organize, with any tax software, because it's not populating it. And you still, you get all of the benefits of not only the automatic organization, but being able to work on screen with the SP Binder, which is, in our view, really the most valuable part. It's what makes a front-end tax process efficient and more efficient than working with paper. So, the Scan and Organize and the SP Binder can be used.
So, Dave, that's an interesting point. Let's just clarify, I guess, the stepping stones or the offerings of SurePrep. At the first level is that Scan and Organize, and that creates the SP Binder. Is that right?
That's right, and that basically organizes the documents to follow the flow of the return in the SP Binder index that we saw, and gives you all the tools of SP Binder. Okay,
and how much does that cost?
That lists for $10 per return, and then there are discounts that, if you go see the special 2020 offer, you'll see what the discounts are. But, it's $10 and then discounted.
So let me get this straight. For $10, you get that Scan, Organize, SP Binder.
That's right. You
$10 or less with the 2020
technology and the binder technology for $10.
Okay. there's no way we can do
And
it.
it's actually less than $10 because you'll get the discount.
Okay, so there's no way that I can do that cheaper in Office with people. That's phenomenal. What's the next step then from Scan and Organize? So everyone can use Scan and Organize in the SP Binder regardless of the tax preparation software that they use. What would be the next step in the Scan and Organize?
The next step is what's called 1040 Scan Trades, which is Organize, plus all of the Schedule D transactions are read, and this also can be used by any tax software as long as the tax software can import Schedule D trades from a spreadsheet, which most can. So this does, what 1040 Scan Organize does, and gives you a spreadsheet with the Schedule D trades that you can import into the tax software.
Okay, great. And that comes in at about how much?
That's 20. So that's that's $20 less the discount.
And then the third, which is Scan, Organize, SP Binder, that middle step of the trades, plus Populate. What tax softwares do you work with there?
Then for our 1040 Scan Pro, which is where we extract data not only from the Schedule D documents, but from all standard documents, and export it directly into the tax software, not just a spreadsheet, but directly into the tax software. But it needs to be an integrated package, which is GoSystem, ProSystem, Lacert, or UltraTax. That's $30 per return, less the discount.
Okay, so just go through those again. That was UltraTax, Pro Series, Lacert, ProSystems, Lacert, and was there another one?
Yeah, and GoSystem.
And GoSystem. Okay, so that scan and that comes in at about $30 less the 2020 discount. Okay, James asked a good question. Do I need to notify my clients that the data is going out of the US, or where is the data going?
The data is not going out of the U.S., so you don't need to notify your clients of that. Our data is our software is housed in world-class data centers located in the United States. We use a company called SoftLayer, which is a U.S. company headquartered in Dallas. We have servers, of course, in multiple locations: Dallas, Seattle, for purposes of redundancy. But yeah, all the data stays in the U.S., and so there's no notification of required.
Okay, Mark, you've got your hand raised. Was it anything more than wanting the comparison between the Lacert products? I'll get that link out to everybody following the webinar. But if there was something, just type it in and we'll go from there. But it looks like those are the questions. Actually, one's come through. Dave, what's best? Should I just start with Scan and Organize and get my systems right, or should I launch straight into Scan, Organize, and Populate?
I would say that, yeah, if this is, if this all is new to you, and considering that, tax season is, I don't know, 6 weeks away, let's say, I think Scan and Organize is a nice way to get your feet wet right now, because it really gets you into the front-end paperless tax process. And what that will do is it'll give you all the benefits that you just saw of SP Binder, and it'll automate your file organization, and it'll get you into that efficient front-end paperless process. And then if you want to then add the Pro part, the Populate part, the scanning and extraction of data and Populate, it requires almost no change in process from that point on. All that will happen is your existing process will be modified with a verification process that gets inserted in the middle. So now, when you're done scanning, you'll have this verification process that you didn't have before. But other than that, there'll be no change to your overall process. So what it does is it breaks up your transition into kind of two parts, gets you on that front-end paperless process first, and then later adds on the data verification part. So I think that's a safer route. We're obviously, if people are committed to, a good training and implementation, a lot of people go right to the Pro, and of course we like that too. It's a more expensive product, but in the end we're most concerned with people just being successful, and so if you do it over time, that's a great way to ensure that.
Okay, that's good advice, Dave. So it looks like all questions are answered, so we might wrap up there, Dave. And again, this is recorded, so what I'd encourage you, once I get it uploaded, encourage your team to get on board and have a look at this webinar, and then really have someone in the office put up their hand and say, yeah, I'm going to test this and kick the tires and see how it would work for our firm. We're seeing some firms reporting savings of 40, 50% of that preparation time with the scan, organize, and populate, and it's really changing tax season for a lot of firms. The end result of the standardized preparation process is really driving profitability for a lot of these firms. So I would encourage you to take a very hard look at the scan, organize, and populate technologies that are out there that have come such a huge way. David, thank you so much for your time. If you have a final comment, now is the time.
I think that's it, but thank you, Damien, for hosting this, and thanks everybody for your time. We really appreciate it, and hope you check out our software and contact us, and we'll provide you any information you need.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. We'll see you online again tomorrow, I hope, as our tax season boot camp continues. So any questions, shoot them through, and we look forward to seeing you online soon. Thank you, folks.